Hello, and welcome to the Knox County Public Library's Tutor Team. My name is Mr. Frederick, and today I will be tutoring grades 4 and 5 in English Language Arts. Our subject today is the main idea and details. The standards we're going to be recovering are, for 4th grade, determining the main idea of a text and explaining how it is supported by key details. For 5th grade, determine 2 or more main ideas of a text and explain how they are supported by key details. Now, you'll notice that both of these are the same. It's just that in 5th grade, they expect you to find multiple main ideas. In 4th grade, it's just one. Pretty similar. Just as you get older, it goes a little bit farther. So, imagine this. Miss Wilhite has a brace on her wrist. What happened? So, Mrs. Wilhite starts telling you this story. Well, I woke up Monday and it was raining. I took my dogs on a walk and then came home, had a bowl of cereal and had some tea. After that, I got ready and went to work. It was a pretty good day. My students were well behaved. After school, I hung out for a while and chatted with Mr. Carrillo. It was about around 3 p.m., so I decided to go home. When I got home, I had dinner and went to the gym. While I was at the gym, I was putting some 45-pound plates on a squat rack. I felt something sharp in my wrist and looked at it and noticed that I had dislocated it from picking up the heavy weight wrong. So, did you really need to know all of that? All you asked for was the main point of the story. What happened to your wrist? To give all of that information is a waste of time. Even though all of that is true, and it's part of the story, it is not important to the main idea. When we ask for main idea, we are looking for one sentence that tells the most important points in the story, and it kind of tells what it's about. In fact, whenever someone asks you to find the main idea, you may hear it as, what is the central idea of the story, or what is the story mostly about? All of that extra information is what we call details, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So let's find the main idea of the story. A little tip. You can usually find a good hint about the main idea of the story by looking at the beginning of a story or paragraph or the end of the paragraph or story. So, well, I woke up Monday and it was raining. I took my dogs on a walk, then came home and ate a bowl of cereal and had some tea. After that, I got ready and I went to work. It was a pretty good day. My students were well behaved, and after school, I hung out for a while and chatted with Miss Carrillo. It was around 3 p.m., so I decided to go home. When I got home, I had dinner, and I went to the gym. While I was at the gym, I was putting some 45-pound plates on a squat rack. I felt something sharp in my wrist, and looked at it and noticed I had dislocated it from picking up the heavy weight wrong. So, when you ask yourself, what is this all about? Well, it's really about how Miss Wilhite dislocated her wrist last Monday by putting weights on a bar at the gym. The next thing we're going to talk about, we're also going to ask you to find supporting details. Supporting details are parts of a story that help us decide what the main idea is. The main idea is the most important information, but the details add to showing us how important the main idea is. Think of it as a table. The tabletop is your main idea, but it's the legs that support it that are your details. So, now we're going to talk about the subject. The subject, or also known as the topic, is easy. It's 1 or 2 key words that tell us what the story is going to be about. In Miss Wilhite's story, the topic is about a wrist injury. The main idea, as we talked about before, is Miss Wilhite dislocated her wrist at the gym. Supporting details are, she was putting a 45-pound plate on a squat bar. We picked that because that's important to how she got injured. She lifted the weight incorrectly. That's another important detail to talk about how she got her wrist injury. And she felt a sharp pain. That's describing what happened. So let's practice real quick. 8 planets orbit or revolve around the sun. The planets and the sun are parts of our solar system. The sun is a star. It is a giant ball of hot gas. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It has mountains, cliffs, and plains. Venus is the hottest planet. It can reach up to 850 degrees. That is hot enough to melt a rocket ship. Earth is her home. It is the only planet that has oxygen and water that people, animals, and plants need to live. Mars is a cold planet. It is sometimes called the red planet because it has reddish soil. Jupiter is the largest planet. It is made of thick gases. If you tried to land a rocket ship, you would sink into the planet. Saturn is the second largest planet. Like Jupiter, it is made mostly of gases. Its rings are made up of rock, ice, and dust. Uranus is cold and windy. It was the first planet to be discovered with the telescope in 1781. Neptune is called the blue planet. It is the coldest planet because it is farthest from the sun. To remember the order of names of the planets, repeat this silly sentence. My very excellent mother just served us nachos. So let's talk about this real quick. Remember what I talked about. You can usually find the main idea at the beginning or the end of a paragraph. Not always, but a lot of the times. Or it'll give you a good hint. If you look at the beginning of this, it says there are 8 planets that orbit or revolve around the sun. So that's going to give me a pretty good clue about what this is going to be about. It's also going to help us with the topic. So what do you think the topic's going to be? What are the planets in the sun? There's a name for those. We call it the solar system. Now, the main idea, like we were talking about, and if you go back and you look at this story, there are 8 very different planets in our solar system that orbit the sun. If you go back and you look, it talks about each planet and how each planet is different. Talking about how, like, Mercury is the closest planet. Jupiter is made up of different gases. That Saturn has rings around it that are made of rock and ice. All of those things are showing how each planet is unique and different. And lastly, some important details that they thought helped support that main idea. Because remember, those details have to do with the main idea. They can't just be about anything. Venus is the hottest planet. Jupiter is the largest planet. Uranus is cold and windy, and Neptune is called the blue planet. All of those are showing how the planets are very different. So, what kind of main ideas are we going to be asked to find? You could be asked to find the main idea of a paragraph, a section or a group of paragraphs, or an entire passage. The first thing we're going to talk about is the main idea of a paragraph. So, for example, they may ask you, what is the main idea of paragraph 5? There's a tip here. Use tally marks. You're going to put a tally mark beside the answer choice every time you see it mentioned in the paragraph. Whichever answer has the most tally marks wins. Now, something else you need to know is sometimes the main ideas may not be stated. You may not find it in the paragraph at all. It may be unstated, which means you just have to look at all your information and come up with what you think the story is all about by using all those details. The next thing we're going to talk about is the main idea of a section. So it may say, what is the main idea of paragraphs 10 through 14? Or what is the main idea of the section with the heading, planting and maintaining your garden? The tip for this is the correct answer choice must have that main idea in every paragraph of that section. If it doesn't, it's probably not your main idea. And the last part we're going to talk about is finding the main idea of the whole passage or the whole story. So, for example, what is the main idea of the passage creating a better world? For the tip on this one, after you choose your answer, ask yourself, is that what the whole passage was about? Was that what the beginning was about, what the middle was about, and what the end was about? So let's practice by talking about the main idea of one paragraph. It was a beautiful morning. The sun spilled tenderly over the horizon. A gentle breeze coaxed the wildflowers to dance in the hills. The mountains stood tall and majestic in the distance. Birds began their morning song. Quiet animals stepped softly through the morning dew. So, what is the main idea of that paragraph? A breeze was blowing. B, animals began moving around. C, it was a beautiful morning. Or D, the setting of the story is in the mountains. So let's try using the tally mark method. We had a breeze was blowing. That was mentioned in one sentence. Animals began moving around. Once again, only mentioned in one sentence. It was a beautiful morning. Now you may say, well, I only saw that sentence once. But you also have to think about it. It was talking about the mountains that many people feel are beautiful. It was talking about the animals and the birds and the setting, and all of those things are what a lot of people consider a beautiful area or a beautiful morning. So there's 6 tally marks there. And the setting of this story is in the mountains. That's mentioned once, but the setting is where the story takes place or when the story takes place. So you're not going to use that as your main idea. So that leaves us with C. It was a beautiful morning. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, oh, hold on. So, was that stated or was it implied? Now, if I go back to the story, it was a beautiful morning. That was the first sentence that we read. So this one was stated. It was kind of implied with some of the information, but that actual sentence, it was a beautiful morning, was right there in the beginning of the paragraph. So it is a stated main idea. Let's try the main idea of a section. Day 17. It was a beautiful morning. The sun spilled tenderly over the horizon. A gentle breeze coaxed the wildflowers to dance in the hills. The mountains stood tall and majestic in the distance. Birds began their morning song. Quiet animals stepped softly through morning dew. Jonah eased from the tent, stretching his back and tired limbs. It was day 17 of his wilderness adventure. He knew that in order to survive the winter months, he would need to collect and store as much food as possible. He was familiar with an area that had bushes with berries in the forest adjacent to his camp. Adjacent is a big word. That is a word that means next to. He also thought he might be able to get plenty of rabbits with his bow, but he didn't know how he would store them. The main issue ahead would be providing nutrition for his body to survive. And what they mean by nutrition is food. If your body doesn't have food, eventually you could get really sick and possibly die. So, what is the main idea of day 17? Jonah woke up and had to decide how he was going to get food for the winter. Jonah woke up to a beautiful morning with animals walking around him. Jonah decided to use his bow to get rabbits, but he didn't know how he would store them. Or Jonah is in a wilderness adventure competition where he could possibly win money. So let's look at some tips that they gave us. Jonah woke up and had to decide how he was going to get food for the winter. So this says main idea of paragraph 1. That was more the main idea of paragraph 2. Or Jonah woke up to a beautiful morning with animals walking around him. That's kind of, they say paragraph 2, because that did happen in paragraph 2. So there's an issue there. It's not the whole story. Remember, it has to be the main idea of both paragraphs. Jonah decided to use his bow to get rabbits, but he didn't know how he would store them. Or D, Jonah is in a wilderness adventure competition where he could possibly win money. They didn't even mention winning money in this, or they mentioned the competition, sorta, but not winning money. So that one's automatically out. So the correct answer is going to be C again, because that's kind of the main idea of both. They were talking about the animals in the beginning. They're talking about how he's going to hunt the animals in the other paragraph, but he doesn't know how he's going to how he's going to store those to keep them from going bad. So now we're going to talk about main idea of the passage. We've already read the first 2 paragraphs, so I'm not going to read those again for time reasons. So we're going to go ahead and skip to paragraph 3. Day 18. Do you notice each of these is a different day? Jonah's day was marked by the conundrum of finding bear cubs near his camp. Now, conundrum's a big word. It's another way of saying the problem or the situation. Immediately upon seeing the cubs, he ran as far away and as fast as he could, because he knew that the mother was likely close by and would not appreciate his presence, which means she wouldn't be happy that he was there, so near her cubs. At this point, he was far from his camp and his stash of berries. He decided to set up a new camp instead of risking his life returning to his old one. This was getting difficult. He had to remind himself of why he was doing this. During the night, Jonah discovered something interesting about his new campsite. A trickle of water could be heard in the distance. There must be a water source nearby. Finally, he had stumbled upon some luck. He might not be out of the competition just yet. Day 20. He was awakened by footsteps. His adventure guide poked his head into the makeshift campsite. Jonah's dad had suffered a stroke, and Jonah needed to return home immediately. He sucked in a deep breath upon hearing the news. The guide assured him that his father would be okay, but that his family needed him home. Jonah didn't hesitate. The wilderness adventure was over. He would not be eligible to compete for the prize money, but some things were more important, and there were lots of ways to earn a buck. So let's look at our answer choices. What's the main idea of the whole passage? A, the wilderness competition was located in the mountains and contestants had the opportunity to win prize money. B, Jonah had many difficulties in the wilderness competition, including figuring out how to store this food. C, Jonah is participating in a survival competition in the wilderness, but must leave due to his father's stroke. D, Jonah decides that a competition is not as important as being with his father. Remember, for the main idea of a passage, you need to know the beginning, the middle, and the end. It has to be something from all of that. It's what it's all about. So let's look at some tips. Excuse me. The wilderness competition was located in the mountains, and the contestants had the opportunity to win prize money. This is kind of talking more about the location, which is a minor detail. It's not important to the main idea. It's also missing what happened at the end of the story. Look at B. Jonah and had many difficulties in the wilderness competition, which was true, including figuring out how to store his food. Now, this one's really only talking about the beginning and the middle of the story. Once again, there's no ending here about how he had to leave. So that's not a good choice. Jonah is participating in a survival competition in the wilderness, but he must leave due to his father's stroke. Now, that one kind of talks about what the whole story is about, but we're not just going to stop because we think that might be the right answer. An important thing to understand is that even though you may have a good answer, there may be one that's better. And a lot of times they're going to have you pick the best answer. So we need to read all of our answer choices. Jonah decides that a competition is not as important as being with his father. Now that is true. That is important. But it only talks about the end of the story. So because of that, that leaves us with answer choice C. Jonah is participating in a survival competition in the wilderness, but he has to leave due to his father's stroke. So, what did we learn today? Well, what is a main idea? Remember, a main idea is what the story is all about. You may hear it referred to as what's the central idea. You may see main idea. There's lots of different names for it, but they all mean the same thing. What is a subject? A subject is another way of saying what a topic is. It's kind of a shortened version of that main idea. You're going to be talking about dinosaurs or solar systems like we did in that one story. Why is all of this important? Well, because the main idea helps you to better understand the central message an author's trying to tell you. In real life, the main idea helps you deeper understand conversations, read into what people are really trying to get you to understand. So, I hope you learned a little bit more about main idea details, and this video will help you a little bit. If you would like to watch this video again or see other Tutor Team videos, you can search on YouTube for the Knox County Public Library Tutor Team. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.